Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Zagi. Dr. Zagi is a graduate from Harvard Medical School. He completed his residency in otolaryngology, ENT, in head and neck surgery at UCLA, and sleep surgery fellowship was done at Stanford University. So, kind of a smart guy. And the focus of his subspecialty training is on the comprehensive treatment of tongue tie, nasal obstruction, mouth breathing, snoring, and obstructive sleep apnea. All of that related to tongue posture and mouth breathing, by the way. So we're going to get a little bit into that. He's very active in clinical research related to sleep disordered breathing, and I know many of you who are tuning in have also attended his lectures. He has over 80 peer-reviewed research publications in the fields of neuroscience, head and neck surgery, and sleep disordered breathing. And when I say I'm honored to have him here tonight, I hope all of you know that it truly is an honor. So Dr. Zagi, thank you so much, especially on a Monday night with a brand new baby at home, to take the time to be with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so fortunate to be able to be here with you and all of your guests to talk about something near and dear to my heart, which is proper breathing. And especially in this time of COVID and mask wearing, it's ever more important that we're cognizant of how we're breathing.
That's fantastic. I'm going to just take a step back and let's just pretend that we're not in the midst of a pandemic and that the idea of even wearing a mask on our face is just foreign. Let's take it back to 2019, basically. And if we just assume for a moment that we aren't wearing masks, we're not in the midst of a pandemic, can you help us understand, Dr. Zagi, why nasal breathing is beneficial?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So breathing through the nose has benefits for children and adults alike. Okay. First of all, nasal breathing is the first line of defense that your body has against microbes, bacteria, viruses, other pathogens. The nose is developed to fight those bacteria and pathogens and filter the air till it goes down into your lungs. So not only does the nose filter the air, but it also warms the air and humidifies it in such a way that it's the perfect temperature for your lungs to be able to use. Now, the problem is that when you mouth breathe, you're losing all that moisture out into the environment. Mm-hmm. When you nasal breathe, the moisture stays in your nose, so it stays inside, and the air can continue to stay moisturized inside your body. But when you mouth breathe, you lose that moisture, and you breathe in cold air. And the cold air can exacerbate your lungs. It can make them into a little bit of a spasm. It can make you cough and have postnasal drip and make you feel chest tightness. So those are a few reasons. But also, when you're breathing through the nose, the body's much more efficient at using that air. It doesn't exhaust your body. You don't get dry mouth. It also helps improve sleep quality, growth, and development, and a lot of great things.
I can, just as you're talking about that, I know, because I've had training in orofacial myology, I know how important it is to breathe through your nose, but just having you talk about it reminds me to get that lip seal, get my tongue in the right position, and really use my nose to protect me against germs, et cetera, and everything you said. And I can just picture everyone listening right now with their lips sealed and breathing through their nose. So thanks for reminding all of us.
Absolutely.
Now, I know that this issue of masks can be a hot topic for many people around the world, but we're here in the United States, and we don't really need to discuss whether kids should wear masks or not, because we're going to follow the guidelines of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And they have stated that kids who are 2 years and older can and should wear cloth face coverings or masks when they're not able to physically distance, just like us, including while in schools, daycare, and other group settings. And that's their guidance. So based on that guidance, our kids are going to be wearing masks in a lot of situations and often for extended periods of time. In addition to everything that you've just run through, such good information, when it comes to young children, do you have any specific concerns about facial development, et cetera, because of wearing a mask and more mouth breathing hidden behind that mask?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's just take a minute and discuss why we're wearing masks in this time and the different kinds of masks. So like you said, you have cloth masks, right? And then separately, you have N95 respirators, okay? So it's only the respirators that are actually filtering in and out the air. And these respirators are not to be used for prolonged periods of time and not to be used by children. This is the only one that's actually filtering out the air. The purpose of the face masks are to prevent inadvertent touching of the face. So if you have a child who's playing, interacting, you'd be surprised how often we're actually touching our nose and the mouth. So the first thing is just as a reminder not to touch your nose and mouth. And the second is that it's to prevent accidental coughing or sneezing and things like that. These masks are not meant to ventilate the air, but if they're worn too tightly, okay, if it's worn too tightly, you can get inadequate ventilation. That means that the air here becomes too hot and too much CO2 develops. And the body's reaction to inadequate ventilation is actually to hyperventilate. And the way that you hyperventilate is by mouth breathing. And so that's why a lot of times, if it gets really hot and stuffy in here, the first thing that you'll do is open up your mouth so you can more effectively ventilate the air, get rid of the humidity, get rid of the heat, get rid of the CO2. So in some ways, it's your body's compensation for an environment that's not doing too well. But instead of mouth breathing, what we should do is recognize that, hey, something's wrong. Maybe I need to take a break. Maybe I need to adjust something, because breathing under a mask should be comfortable and it should be nasal. So if there's mouth breathing going on, it suggests that there's something wrong. If you mouth breathe, you're going to be losing a ton of humidity. That means that your child's going to become dehydrated. If they're dehydrated, they're not going to feel well. They're not going to know why. They're going to get tired. They're not going to be able to understand, pay attention. You get ADHD type symptoms and so on.
That's so true. There's really good research that shows that many children are getting less water than they need. They're dehydrated. And I am concerned with the mask that they won't take, as I think I've done 3 or 4 times already, just being a speech pathologist and knowing about vocal hygiene, to take another sip and use that water to their advantage. So that's a great point that you bring up. And we know for sure, based on research, that that as children become dehydrated, they can't focus and they can't learn.
Absolutely.
But we still need to follow the guidelines and keep them healthy. So what about this concept of changes in facial development if your mouth is open? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And tonight we're being sponsored by Holland Healthcare, the maker of the throat scope. So I may jump in a little bit and just demonstrate while you're talking about it.
Excellent. Totally. So first of all, let's talk about how we nose breathe. Okay. And in order to nasal breathe, you have to have a patent nasal passage, and you have to have the tongue up in the roof of the mouth. Okay. So just think about that. So you have to have the tongue up in the roof of the mouth. If your tongue is down, you're not going to be able to breathe through the nose. Your back of your tongue actually has to get up, okay? So let's just do it. It's a little bit inverted here. But the back of the tongue has to get up to make a seal with the back of the throat in order for the air to come out the nose instead of the mouth. If your tongue is down, you're going to mouth breathe. By contrast, if you're mouth breathing, the only way to do that is with your tongue down. If your tongue is down and not up, it's not putting that force on the upper jaw. Okay, and the tongue is a natural palate expander. So when the tongue is high in the roof of the mouth, the teeth are going to grow wide. But if the tongue is down, then the arches will collapse in and grow narrow. So that's how the tongue is actually an orthodontic appliance when used appropriately, and it's used appropriately when it's high in the roof of the mouth. Now, to teach people, why am I a mouth breather, right? So, when you want to use the mask, the first thing you have to do is actually make sure they can breathe through their nose. That's step one. And so how do you make sure that someone can breathe through their nose? Well, like I said, there's 2 reasons why you won't be able to breathe through the nose. Either your nose is plugged up or the tongue can't get up to make that seal. So that's conditions like tongue tie. When children are tongue tied, it takes a lot of effort to keep their tongue up in the roof of the mouth, and the tongue will be low. And when the tongue is low, they're going to mouth breathe. So how do you know if they can breathe through their nose? You get the little device here, like a little mirror, and you see how it fogs up there?
Right.
Okay. If it doesn't fog up, only one side fogs up, then you can actually take the little throat scope and take a look. Is there crusting there? Crusting in the nose, debris in the nose, is a sign of chronic mouth breathing. Why? When you're mouth breathing, you lose that humidity. The nose gets dried up. It gets crusted. When it's crusted, the nose doesn't work as well. So the first step in that case is going to be to use a nasal spray, like a saline spray of some kind, okay? And just to learn to blow your nose, to clean out the nose, okay? After that, we then practice nasal breathing. You can hold something between the lips, like a piece of paper or a popsicle stick, or even your device here.
Mm-hmm.
And you practice breathing. And we've published that if you can breathe for more than 3 minutes with your lips sealed, it's probably not a nasal issue. It's probably a habit issue, a breathing style, or a tongue tie, tongue posture issue.
Mm-hmm.
If they cannot breathe through their nose for 3 minutes, then you want to look at things like large tonsils in the fossas there, okay? Things like deviations of the septum. You can have septal deviations where this is a straight septum here, okay? And this is a deviated septum. Large turbinates. So this is a little backwards here. So you can see that the turbinates are a little bit enlarged on one side versus the other. Nasal valve collapse, allergies, and things like that we specialize in as ENTs and so on. So once you've established good nasal breathing, then you can go on and practice the mask wearing, for example. If you are going to wear a mask, you want to start with 5 minutes, 30 minutes, work your way up. And if you're feeling like your mouth is getting dry, you're getting hot, then you want to figure out why that is. Maybe take a break. Maybe get a mask that's right for you, and happy to take any other questions. But so important to nasal breathe because it's going to filter and purify the air. It's going to retain the moisture. You're going to get warm air to your lungs rather than cold air that makes you have cough and asthma-like symptoms. It's more efficient. You're going to maintain the hydration. It's going to help optimize maxillofacial growth and development, and it's what we want for our kids and adults alike.
That's fantastic. You taught me a few things in that. I love that. I'm very excited about talking to you today. We've had several guests that have been sponsored by Holland Healthcare and ThroatScope, and we've talked a lot about oral facial myology. And I know that you have certified oral facial myologists who are working at the Breathe Institute as well, and just the possible changes that we might see in a very young child's mouth if they get into the pattern of mouth breathing and having their tongue in the incorrect position as you described, because their face is changing from a cute little round face like your new baby at home to slowly over time elongating and becoming more like a toddler face and then a preschooler's face. How about that? Oh, cute. So going from, just as you just so beautifully demonstrated, a round face as a baby to more that toddler face. And of course, we know as we get into preschool, we're a little bit longer face, and that face continues to grow. But if your tongue isn't able to get up into the palate as you described, we will actually see changes in facial muscle and bones, the basic formation of the face. And it grows in a way that nature didn't intend it to grow because of those issues. And we've had several guest speakers talking about that as well. As a matter of fact, on Thursday on the Holland Healthcare Facebook page, we will have my dear friend Erin Geddes, who's attended several of your lectures, Dr. Zagi, and she'll be talking about preschoolers and thumb sucking and what we can do for preschoolers to help them stop sucking their thumb and why that's so important for many of the reasons that you've already brought up so eloquently here today. So we've been talking about, about the mask, about mouth breathing, et cetera. So what are we going to do to help little kids, especially remember if they're capable to close their lips. Now, if they're not capable, then we need to make sure that someone like Dr. Zagi, an otolaryngologist, a certified oral facial myologist, for example, that we have a team that takes a look at why that might be and helps that child. Perhaps there is a tongue tie, perhaps there are some dental issues, perhaps there's some nasal obstruction. We could go on and on about all the possibilities. But assuming that they're capable, and I love how you described holding something like your throat scope blade lightly between your lips for a good 3 minutes, there's no nasal obstruction, then what strategies can we use? And I just wanted to offer 4 or 5 to everyone before we begin taking questions for Dr. Zagi. Now, some kids, will benefit from a clear mask because, first of all, we're able to see their lips, monitor, and give them some reminders throughout the day to remember to keep their mouth closed. But also at schools, we often have mirrors in front of the classroom sinks. Not unusual at all, especially in the younger preschool, first grade, kindergarten settings. And that's a great time to have a sticker on the mirror of some lips, just to remind everybody, especially if they have a clear mask, that when they're washing their hands, to close their lips. Another strategy around that, and parents, you can use this at home too, is to create a hand washing song, but have everybody hum it for those 20 seconds, just to get our brain in a place of, oh yeah, I want to keep my lips closed as long as I'm not talking. Another strategy that works really well is to buy a couple very inexpensive little bracelets at the dollar store. And every day before your child goes off to school, or perhaps they're being schooled virtually at home, you put that bracelet on their wrist and say, oh, this is the bracelet that helps you remember to keep your lips closed and breathe through your nose. If you change that bracelet every day, the kids are more likely to remember that that's what it's for. So as I said, just a few inexpensive bracelets can really go a long way. And then just 2 more ideas for you, and then we'll be taking some questions. Many speech therapists, occupational therapists, and parents of kids with special needs are familiar with it. We have various watches and types of wristbands that will vibrate, and you can actually set them to every 30 minutes or so. You could have that little vibration simply be there to remind them to close their lips. In other settings, perhaps school, perhaps if you are having a group outing where everyone needs to wear a mask and you're going to be out and about for a few hours and you want to remind your child to keep their lips closed unless they're talking, you can also place a little sticker on their desk or periodically through a book or a notebook. So when they do turn the page and they see a little surprise sticker, they know that means, oh yeah, close my lips. So it's just a matter of a few auditory or visual reminders, and not a lot of expense to go into that. Pretty easy to do to help everybody to remember to breathe through their nose, especially behind a mask.